So, for a while now, I have not said anything much personally where my own beliefs lie and what's currently happening in the world. And there's going to be a lot of editing to this because there are a lot of still emotions and thoughts that I'm processing and that will be edited personally in my head and heart. For a while, I felt like my voice didn't need to be heard because there were so many other voices, so many other influencers, so many other people that could have a much larger range than I could have. But then, while driving home, I thought to myself, just because your voice doesn't travel doesn't mean you haven't said anything. So I'm going to say something. And as I sit here alone after work at my desk and speak these words, I don't know who my audience will be. I don't know who will hear any of this or how it will be taken. I just know I want to speak, and I want to speak into this microphone and just speak because I have been really, really silent. People instinctively want to connect to other people. So the very idea of racism is completely unnatural. And people may say, well, animals divide out the world based on their species, but as a human species, this is unheard of for a species to cause its own self destruction. And where this is seen is in things like cancer, where one cell that was a part of all the other cells, I'm not going to get into the science and medical parts of it, but it goes rogue and it starts attacking the other cells. And it's unnatural for the cell to do that. It's been infected with something. Something has misaligned for the cell to do something like that. To have an elected leader of this country completely disregard a portion of the people in which they have been hired to lead has been nothing short of disgraceful. To watch people continually control the actions of others, to not have the ultimate repercussion of death, is disturbingly absurd. White America is the parent, and Black America is the child. And I'm witnessing so much from my own trauma play out on a massive scale, and the trauma of the individuals affected again by this curse of racism. And it's unbelievable how parallel the two are. And so much can be explained by the two. But if I'm going to explain it, I guess I should start from the beginning, right? I never thought that I would be living in times similar to that of the older generations previous to me. We all look at those pictures in history class and laugh and off and go, haha, that was then, like it's over now. Like they put in the work. It's good. We're done, right? Like now it's just like micro movements forward. And that's as kids. Despite us kids seeing very obvious disparities between our public schools and other public schools in higher income areas, but as adults, it became so much more clear the more doors that we have tried to go through and the more doors that have been shut, and the responses when those doors are being shut in our faces. And we've built up this weird, not even thick skin, this weird numbness to racism because it's been around. This is just being caught on technology now, but it's been around, and we've known about these things. We've seen them in history class. I mean, college was the first time I got a real history lesson and in slavery and what has happened. And my first thought, well, maybe this was too sensitive to teach the high schoolers and kids, but no, they should know. They should know. They should understand a little more than the sugar coating that is handed to them. And like most sugar, it's not good for you. It rots. So we built up this numbness where, and I'm speaking as black people. I'm not African American. My mother did not migrate here from Africa. I'm black. I was born here. I'm black. And there is quite a difference between the two cultures. There's a numbness to it, not just because we were raised in it. Racism is a generational curse. It's a generational curse. And there's been so much talk in the spiritual community about generational curses. And this is one of them. This is the deepest trauma. This is the deepest trauma. A trauma that the Black community has passed on by beating their children. A trauma that has been passed on in the mentality of what careers we reach for, what aspirations we have, how we teach our children to handle their credit and their bills and all these things. And by no means am I blaming the Black community for starting this trauma, but it's a trauma that's been carried on through generation after generation. So it's turned into microaggressions on one side and trauma responses on the other. And when I saw the riots, it was a massive trauma response. A child that goes through trauma of not being heard will have the biggest trauma response when they are continually being ignored. And this goes so deep. It goes so deep that I don't know how far I can explain it in this initial audio. But I will explain it because this is one big trauma response. And what we're facing is the initial trauma that started it, the generational curse of racism. So I want you to remember that white America, white culture, white people are the parent. And then I want you to remember throughout this example that Black people are the children, or Africans, because we're going to go a bit back. Trauma one would be being removed from the home. And I don't even think I'm going to number these because there's so many. But it started from the child being removed from their home into an environment that felt like war. A family split up. And yes, there will be other cultures that can relate to this, including white culture. I get it. Follow me for this example. Broken home. The slaves being taken from the motherland because it was from several places. We were in a lot of places, is the initial trauma of a broken home. And someone who has become the parent figure, the authority, has taken us to a home that does not feel safe, that does not feel welcoming, that does not feel like home. So often, children are asked to do things that the parent does not want to do. And I will go back and forth on this. This is important. There is a control aspect in parent and child. The child is not paid for their chores. The child is not reimbursed for their time. There is a expected servitude, even in Black homes, of the child, and their needs do not ever come first unless at the convenience of the parent. It would be very ignorant of me to say these things had I not experienced them personally and watched my peers experience these things as well. So I'm going to tie together the parent and the child and this trauma and this generational curse. So the child's in this home now, and the parent says, "You have to do this." And the child goes, "I have to do this?" And they go, "Yes, otherwise we're not going to feed you. We're not going to be able to play. You can't do anything. This is what we want you to do." The loss of free will, a human nature aspect, I'd go so far to say, removed. Children have no free will, yet parents tell them that they're free all the time. They're just free to do what they'd like them to do within the sometimes, most times, extreme limits that are given to them. In fact, it has to be in the same interest of the parent for you to do these things. And if you're shocked to hear about this dynamic, don't be, because it's very common, and consider yourself lucky if you have not experienced any of these dynamics. You go to sleep when I tell you to, you wake up when I tell you to. Your interests will be the interests that I say that you should have. And again, this is in minority cultures. Not just Black, but mostly Black is what we're addressing today. And boundaries are good, but again, when all will is lost, where is the person to be found? If free will and free action show our character, when do we build a character when it's lost? When do we build a culture when we are not allowed to have one? Where do we build a society if we're not allowed to? So, in the broken home, slave labor, rape, abuse. Have you ever encountered a person that has gone through physical abuse and rape and the things that occur in their heads and hearts as a repercussion for it afterwards? This is the mass scale of what's occurred in the African American Black culture. And we're still early on, which is why I'm mixing both of those at this point, or including both. There's a fear and a submission. And a lot of slaves did submit and say, "This is our life now, and this is how it would be." And for many of them, they lived their entire lives enduring those circumstances. How could we ever develop healthy love in our own culture under those circumstances. Two slaves could fall in love, and the master could decide, oh, actually, I want her. You can get sold. Over generations, it affects our ability to bond. And more in our culture than any other is it expected that we do everything on our own. Soul survivor, soul soldier. So, a preteen or teenage rebellion begins to happen. I am going to paraphrase this. Not paraphrase, summarize. Uh, Teenage rebellion happens when we try to get free. And then comes more oppression. Freedom, including having our own lives, living under our own free will, under our own character, developing who we are. When you're raised in an abusive household, it takes a long time to find who you are. Because you've had people telling you what you are and who you are and what you like and what you don't like for the longest. It gets buried. It gets lost. Who we are has, as a culture, has gotten lost. On top of the psychological abuse. You think you're going to get a job out there, nigger? You think you're going to be something? You're a nobody. You're not even a person. You don't even count as a person according to our Constitution. Where have I heard that before? Right. In the households of Black families. And again, other cultures, the one offs could totally be included, but it's been mostly in our cultural homes. Who are you getting smart with? Don't be out here acting all fresh, wearing those outfits. What are you trying to be sexy? Oh, I'm sorry. I was just trying to find my sexual identity, but I didn't know I was inviting, sin into my life. Excuse me. Amongst other things. Whenever we tried to gain an individuality within our households, it was frowned upon. Think of the way that children are spoken to, as if children have a malicious intent for wanting to be individuals, as if children have a malicious intent, as if children are specifically getting smart with you because they truly have hate for you, because they truly don't like you, because they've somehow developed the psychological ability to figure out how to push an adult's buttons as if that were something psychologically possible. Ridiculous. The amount of control, the amount of oppression in our own households as a result of this generational curse. It runs so deep. It hurts my heart how deep it runs in our culture, and I see it still to this day. Change your tone when you're talking to me. There's this thing of trying to teach children to respect you before you even teach them to love you. But we have valued respect because over generations, we haven't had respect from anyone. And still to this day, we are fighting for respect from anyone. And if you were to step out of line, oh, you got a beating. Go get a switch off the tree. Go get me a belt. How's that any different than go get my whip? Or go get a switch off the tree? And we beat the children into submission, just like we were beaten by Massa. Oh, this runs real deep. And it's no wonder that all the stars are aligning, if that's your thing. All the stars are aligning right now. The retrograde, the squares, the eclipses. This is a major flashback, and this is an entire reflection held up to us. This is common in the Black household, and it is made as a joke when we're older, but that joke is quite a coping mechanism. Because at the time it really hurt. And then we think, oh, I turned out fine. And we're like, did you? Did you? Because now you're beating your own children, thinking that's the correct way to parent and to teach. Because if your child is too stupid to understand an explanation, surely they're smart enough to understand that they'll get their ass beat if they step out of line. And then we wear it like a token of the Black culture, waving our belts in the air, going, we discipline our children. Yeah, just like Massa. We give our children no respect. We give them no credit as humans, and we don't even treat them as humans. Us as adults ourselves even say, don't talk to me like I'm a child. Really, how is that? Disrespectfully? Condescendingly? Negatively? Or controlling? Which one? I can't figure it out. The Black culture is still in a rebellion teen trauma response. Because every time we start to find ourselves, it's destroyed. And people other than ourselves try to tell us who we are, what our character is, what we're not good for, what we are good for. In a very negative context. And we've taken it out on our own children. And this has become, again, the most poisonous generational curse you could ever imagine or see. And it started with racism. And it will only end with racism ending. For us to look at ourselves with how we're being treated, and then look at how that's reflecting onto the children. I may not be the parent in these scenarios, but I am the child. I am the product of these things. Any of you ever been made an example out of in front of your friends? They did that in the fields too. Told you better not back talk, or I'll slap you so hard it'll knock your tongue out your mouth. Just something really violent. Why? 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 Slap the black off of you? Funny? Not really. Terrifying to a child that doesn't understand. And we assume that they do. Racism is unnatural. Racism is a trauma. This is traumatic. These experiences for people that are out there at the protests, this is traumatic. For those of us that are witnessing these people that look like us die on social media, it's traumatic. Hearing about these things day after day after day and living these things day after day after day is traumatic. When I can sit in my office and all the black coworkers can go around and say the first time they've ever been called a nigger or been discriminated against blatantly, it's a trauma. And we are all triggered as hell right now. So here we are trying again to be ourselves, to be seen as the adults that we are. We are not the child and they are not our parent, but we are humans just like they are. Our children are humans, new here. They are new here. And they are still psychologically developing at the ages that we discipline them, not teaching respect and how to follow the rules, but teaching them submission. How many women out there are struggling to find their sexuality because they were told they can't wear certain things or have certain makeup or move their bodies in certain ways because of that oppression? How many people out there have a hard time speaking because they were told to shut up all the time by their parents? How many people have a hard time putting themselves first, especially in the Black community? Why do we have the hardest time putting ourselves first? Because we were always taught to put ourselves last. And where did we learn that? The generational curse. I'm saying that if we're going to eliminate racism, we have to eliminate the trauma effects of it as well. Because this ain't going to change overnight. It also has to change in our responses, in the ways that we have been trained to be because of what's been passed down to us, the way that we have been taught to interact in society, the way that we have been told that we need to present ourselves. These are not unique experiences in the Black household. You see the memes floating around the internet about all of this shit. People go, haha, that's so funny. It's not. It goes so deep. And I know it runs deep because we see it in our own households. So if you're offended, good. Because now maybe you're aware something is the hell off. I don't just want to end racism. I don't just want to wake people up to these concepts and to look at them in this way. I want to talk. I want to say these things out loud. Because this is ridiculous. So my words may not travel. I may not become the next internet star. I may not be MLK or Malcolm X, but I am speaking. And as long as I am speaking truthfully from my heart and listening to my own words and standing by them, then they'll at least be heard by me. There's so much that I have to say. And I wanted to start by saying this. This runs so much deeper than people are aware. And the whole point of Holistic Hangout is to help bring awareness to people's options, to bring awareness to healing, to what's possible with your healing. And I want to do my job.